Hello everybody, it's Coach Rosa here. In this video, we will go ahead and discuss Venn diagrams and also finding patterns with the use of slope-intercept form. Now, when using Venn diagrams, especially in logic, we have to understand that there has to be a hypothesis and there has to be a conclusion. Now, in Venn diagrams, you usually design them as you have your if and then you have your then. Okay. Now, from here, we'll work on a few examples and see if you can go ahead and create some on your own with the use of these examples. Now, on this one, okay, so conditional statements and Venn diagrams. So rewrite each as a conditional statement and fill in the diagram. We want to go ahead and specify what we just did previously in the other videos, where you're creating your own statements. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to go ahead and break up our sentences. So dogs are animals. So I'm going to have a breaking point there. I'm going to pick a word. It's going to be my breaking point. So if it is a dog, so that means my if is going to be dog. So I have dog, and then it is a mammal. Okay, so I got mammal. They didn't ask us for the truth value, but like we're just trying to build our Venn diagram as we're going. Okay, so that's my if, that's my then. So let's pick another one. And so papayas have seeds. So I'm gonna break it there. That's my word to break. So if it is a papaya, then it has seeds. So if it is a papaya, then it has seeds. So I got papaya, and then I have seeds. Okay, so if it's not rocket science, that's initially what's going on with these. So just make sure you have a break, find a word to break the whole entire sentence with. So linear pairs are adjacent. So here's your breaking point, here's your if, and there's your then. Okay, and then you can figure those out on your own as we're going. Okay, just a few examples here and there to go ahead and use. Okay, so the next part I want to go and use is that when you try to solve, find patterns using equations, you have to remember that we did this back in the previous videos as well. So ideally a rule, it's a pattern, but we're using values to go ahead and justify that pattern. Now, we're going to use the same idea that we did from the previous one where we talked about the first difference and the second differences. Okay, so I'll work on one, and then you can reference back to other videos to go and solve these. So if I go from first to second, my first difference. Yeah, I know I have the word equation there, so I'm going to write over it. So I have plus 5. Next one, plus 5. Next one, plus 5. So you have to find these patterns as you're going. So the next one, here to there, plus 1, here to there, plus 1, here to there, plus 1, here to there, okay, plus 1. So every single term has a pattern as we're going. So if we're trying to build this, find a slope, I'm going to take what I already know to create it. Now, that means change of y over change in x has to be equal to whatever I find. So I have 5 is my change in y, and then my positive 1 is my change in x. So this is my pattern, which is simply going to become just regular 5. So that's going to be my m. Okay, so this is your pattern that we're looking for. Okay, so so now ideally you already have your slope already completed for you. So from here, let's choose a different color. So gray. So I have y is equal to 5x plus b because I'm using slope-intercept form. And I know my m, which is going to be my 5, which is right here, which is right there, which are replaced. And then you just got to solve for B. So a little quick refresher, just all you really want to do, pick a good color, go purple, is pick a set of points. Okay, pick one point in here in the table, and you can go ahead and figure out which one you can go ahead and solve for B. So I'm going to pick the easiest one, which is 1, 2. So ideally, I would suggest picking one that has like 0, 1, 1, 2, something that's really small for you to go ahead and not necessarily like always pick the biggest number. So I have y is equal to 5x plus b. So I'm going to pick my y is going to be 2, which is, and then my x is going to be 1. So this will be 1 plus b. So 5 times 1 is 5. And then I have 2. And then when I'm looking for b, I'm just going to go ahead and subtract 5 on both sides, which is b is equal to 2 minus 5 gives you a negative 3. So there you go. So now you have all your important parts. So when you combine them, what will result will be your final answer. So my equation is y is equal to 5x minus 3. Okay? So that's your equation for this one. So if you remember from the previous units where you equation of lines videos, you can always use that one to reference to. Okay? So when you're looking for these patterns, you have to use the first difference so you can recognize what you're looking for. So like right here, if we go to the next one, how do you get from -2 to 0? You'll jump +2. Like if you owe me $2, and then how do you not owe me any more money? You pay me $2, so you have to be +2. So next one is +2. Next one's +2. Next one's +2. And then now I have my change in y, which is equal to +2. Okay, so I leave it as a +2. And then the other one, I have, it's -9 to a -6. And then you keep jumping. And as you notice, it starts increasing. So it's a plus. How do you get from -9 to a -6? You go +3, +3, +3, +3. Now, I know some individuals are out there and they're like, oh, well, I don't know my integers for whatever reason. So here's one way I go ahead and interpret it in, let's change it, in my class. So I make up a scenario of, like, if you're standing above ground, let's make them, okay. If we're standing above ground here, and we're trying to figure out how deep the hole is. So let's say there's a hole that was made, and we'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we'll say that hole is at -8. So that's -8 into the ground. And so this happens to be 0 because that's where we're always neutral at. Now, if your height happens to go ahead and be, I don't know, we'll say 6 feet. We'll say 6 just to keep it even. We'll say you're 6 feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so 6 feet. And we're trying to figure out how far up is we're trying to move up into this scenario to reach 0. So if we're moving all this dirt and we're putting it back in there, and we have that, I put up 1 more feet. So that's +1. So that means you move up and you're at -7. I put another pile of dirt. Now I have another +1, which is -6. And then the scenario keeps going until you fill the hole in, okay? Because you're trying to fill it in. So the numbers start rising as we're going. So the more pluses that you receive, and I know I'm going to run out of space, you're going to come back to being at 0. And then if you happen to go and say like at +1 because you're still filling up the dirt, and then +1, now we're in the positive numbers, we're at 1 and 2. Okay? So think of it as shoveling dirt, making a hole, and you're trying to go ahead and cover up the whole entire hole. And every single time you cover it, you're adding a +1 more feet into the ground. Okay, so one way of thinking about it. Now, just to finish this, the pattern that we ended up finding was this right here. So that's actually my slope that we just found. So this is your slope, which is the pattern we're looking for. Okay, so that means that is my n. Okay, so you can find slope another way. You can use tables to find slopes too. Okay, so that's where I'm going to leave it at for equations and write a rule for each set of data. Okay, and then now the next part is that sometimes these equations aren't going to be necessarily like tables will not be made for you, and you have to identify this and you have to create it. So the way that we create these is that you can go ahead and give yourself a designated starting point. So this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. So I'm going to put 1, 2, and 3. So this is going to be my first term. These are my terms. Okay, so this is first, this is my second, this is my third image. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to count. So I have 1, I have 2, so that's 2. I got 1, I got 2, I got 3, I got 4, I got 5, I got 6. That's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 10. Okay, so from here you can start filling in what you know, and then you can solve it. So you treat it just like we did in the previous example, and you identify which term is which, and how is it increasing. And then right here it's plus 4. Right here it's plus 4. So that means that my change in y, okay, I'm running out of space. My change in y is equal to 4. Now, if I'm trying to solve for my change in x, all we're really doing is just changing the numbers. So it's plus 1, that's going to be plus 1. So that's going to be 1. Okay? So from here, it's going to be 4 is my slope. Just regular 4. Now, if you're wondering what happened to the 1, it just disappeared because it happens to be the imaginary 1 underneath the 4. And if you type it into the calculator, what pops out, it's going to be that number. Okay? So just giving you startup ideas on how to do these, okay? Sometimes the images are going to look different. Just treat it the same way. And sometimes you can identify which ones already are in there. So if I know that those are always going to be my values that are inside, then you may use that as a constant number that's always being added to it. And then we're just adding just these right here. Just throwing ideas out there, so you can go ahead and use. Maybe some of you may click, some of you may not click, but if I were y'all, I would reference back to this scenario, and you can build your table, and then you can solve for it. Okay, so just giving so this is how you go ahead and look for rules, patterns, and build equations with when you're given a set of blocks to create a table, when you're given just simply the table, and when you're given a Venn diagram along the way. Okay, so tune into the next video, guys. Hello, everybody. It's Coach Rosa here. So in this video, I will go ahead and address how to go ahead and find the next term in a figure when you got to create the algebraic rule for it when you're given like a set of blocks. So if you saw the previous videos, maybe you have an idea of how to create your own table when you're given these blocks. So the first thing you want to do is that you want to go ahead and create the values. Here's my first, here's my second, here's my third. Okay, and then from here, you can go ahead and create a table. So I know these are my constants and they will never change. So I have first, I got second, I got third. Now my y values are going to be how many blocks I have to work with, because that's what's changing. So I have first, second, third, fourth, fifth. I got 5 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I got 9. So I have 5. I got 7. I got 9. And then from here, you can go ahead and create your own you can create the equation that we need, so the rule. So if you're curious how to create it, you want to go ahead and use pattern as in the first difference. So the first difference between the first two terms and the next two and so forth. So you have 2 and you have 2. So that's positive 2, positive 2. So that means my change in y, which is my slope. So you have to find slope first. Is going to be 2 over. And then I'm going to look for, that's plus 1, that's plus 1. So my change in x is going to be 1. And now my final answer for this is going to be 2. So that means my equation, so you start moving this stuff around. So that means my equation is y is equal to 2x plus b, so forth. So that's what the first half I got. Now you want to go ahead and plug in a certain point from your table. So for my table, I'm just going to pick the most basic one because sometimes you don't have that many large values to work with. And so I'm going to replace 1 and 5 for x and y. Okay. So let's get rid of that. Now, as I'm going through the year, you want to go ahead and plug them in. So you have y, which is going to be 5, and then 2, which is x is going to be, it's going to be 1, and then plus b. So 2 times 1, which is 2. And then minus 2 on both sides, and that's going to be b is equal to 3. Okay? So the equation that you have is going to be y is equal to 2x plus 3. So that's the rule. That's the one we have that we're going to go ahead and follow. Now, you might have a scenario where it's asking you, hey, you got to find the 7th block, the 7th figure that we have. Now, if there's ways of doing it. You can go ahead and continue your pattern and keep growing your table. That's one way. Okay. And then the other way is that you can just simply use what you know. So y is equal to 2x plus 3. And then you can go ahead and plug in 7. So here n is equal to 7. And you want to plug it in to your x. So that means you have 2 times 7 plus 3, which is 14 plus 3, which is 17. So that means you will have 17 blocks. You will have 17 blocks for the 7th figure. Okay. Now, just be aware as you're going through these, and some of you may like this part right here, and some of you are like, I still don't like the part of it, and I need to see the table. So the table would come out to be. Let's see if I can go and get this one. So copy it. Paste it. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to erase this part right here. Okay, so if you notice the differences between each one of these, so what I'm going to draw is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. So when we're creating these, we agree that this is adding by 1. If not, then I just did a terrible job. Okay, so the other part here is that once you go and get these patterns going, you kind of get in a flow of things, especially if you're really good with adding them, their numbers real quick. So that's 2, that's 13, that's going to be 15, and then now you have 17. And so now here is my final answer. Okay? You have 17 blocks. Okay? So always remember that this is your term. You have your x because it's independent, and then your y is dependent because it depends on whichever term it is. So that means it's going to be the number of blocks in this case because that's always changing. Okay. So there you go. Just an example of how to go ahead and solve for the next term and predict it when you are given a set of blocks and you're asked to go and write a rule for it. Okay. All right, guys. Tune into the next video.